changing ports in 2017. I mean, it's too advanced for me. A big part of essentialism is saying no. Like, you know, 1,000 no's for every yes.
Ultimately, as a manager or as a founder or CEO or whoever, or just a colleague, your job is to help others do their job better.
Hello, I'm Radek.
I'm Michael.
And this is the podcast.
A sounding board for interesting ideas and insights. We discuss books we read and want to share with you,
as well as technology and productivity, which is what we do by day working on our app, Nozbe.
Or whatever else comes to mind.
We're back to books again, and today we're going to discuss a book we've mentioned so many times that we've assumed we've already properly talked about it for an episode, but we didn't.
I mean, come on, 112 episodes and we haven't discussed about, this book, really?
Yeah, but there's just so many that we don't remember the stuff we've been talking about and the stuff we thought we've been talking about because we had something on our list for like a year. But actually, we didn't properly discuss this. We mentioned many times the ideas from the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown, but not like properly, not like today.
Yeah, so that's why today I wanted to get back to it. Just recently, I forced myself to publish my highlights from this book on my blog. We'll link to it in the show notes. I've read this book 3 times, twice as an audio, and then once physically, paper back this spring, just after I published an interview with Greg. I was fortunate enough to talk to him for the last Essential episode of the Proactive magazine. So it was an amazing experience for me, and to talk to the author, to have this interview, and it motivated me to read the book again. And I read the book 3 times, partly because I'm not that smart, but also partly because it's a tough book because it seems easy, but it's tough. It's tough because it's tough to implement what was there in the book.
Yeah, this is something I very much felt more recently because I've read Essentialism, I think 2 years ago or something like that. It was before I got really into audiobooks, so I read it in paper, and I unfortunately haven't taken proper notes as I tend to do these days. But when I was reading Nonviolent Communication, which we've just discussed 2 weeks ago, I really felt that the message is simple. It's simple to understand, and it makes obvious intuitive sense that this is better, but it's not easy. It's not easy to implement. And I think the same is true of Essentialism, which is it's not a guide. It's not a book of theory or research. It's a manifesto, right? It tries to convey certain values of how to live your life, and if you're like us, then you'll probably appreciate them and agree with them and want to implement them in your life. But then it turns out actually living it is not so easy. It's so contrary to how we're used to living and just many values in our society that it's a book you have to reread many times if you're serious about it.
Yeah, and that's why I published recently my highlights from the book, just to make sure that I can, if I don't have time to read the book, I'm gonna at least reread my highlights. So like the messages will get back to me. So before we discuss the book, the thing goes full circle because the book starts with this premise that with the question, why people who have achieved success, continued success at some point, and suddenly this success was a catalyst for failure for them. Like suddenly they were failing. And one of the reasons, apart from hubris, is actually hubris. So it's actually the fact that you think you can do anything or everything, right? Mm-hmm. And this brings this hits home like so many things. This hits home why we both worked, for example, on Remag, remember?
Yeah.
We had this idea that we have already a successful business called Nozbe, so let's do Remag, let's do the second business, because we're already doing Proactive Magazine, and then let's do Remag, and then make a second business. And, let's be Elon Musk and have several businesses. They're all going to be multi-million-dollar businesses. We're going to, just be amazing. We can do it, right? Like, we can do anything or everything, right? Well, if you've been following us for the last, 2-3 years, you can appreciate that. The good thing that came out of the Remag was the idea for this podcast. But we have since closed the Remag. We have closed the Proactive Magazine with Essentialism as the last episode, and it was actually a very deliberate choice of the book and of the theme, because we want to focus on doing Nozbe, and we want to have full power, full force, full deep work on Nozbe. And why? Because Nozbe was our success. Nozbe brought us where we are here. And at some point we started thinking we can be serial entrepreneurs, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And at the same time, we forgot that Nozbe gave us success, and Nozbe can be a lot more successful if we give it appropriate focus, appropriate love, and appropriate attention, and if we essentially focus on what's essential. So on Nozbe, on helping people get organized.
I really like the subtle difference of saying that we can do anything or we can do everything, because even if you can do quote unquote anything, you can do everything. You know what I mean? Like, you can pick one thing, and like, it's possible. Probably not. Probably the idea was not quite good. But in theory, let's assume we could have done Remag, and then we could have made it successful.
Right.
But we couldn't do both. Right?
No.
And so even if you're confident in your ability to pick a project and make it work, hubris will make you think that you can fit multiple instances of them, and it turns out there's just not enough time and not enough attention to do multiple. So you can't do everything, even if you could do anything.
Yeah, and the thing is that when I was reading this book, and it struck me how amazed I was at some people just doing one thing, and just being extremely successful. Like for example, a blogger who was just doing this one blog. And like, for example, Leo Babauta, he was doing this one blog, Zen Habits, and then suddenly just exploded. It brought him lots of success. And it was just this blog. He wasn't doing anything else. He was doing just this blog, and he was extremely successful. And then other people just doing one thing, just doing something that, and kept doing that, and not thinking about what's next for you, right? And that's why, when people ask me what's next for me after 10 years of running Nozbe, I'm like, the new version of Nozbe, right? So that's what was next for me. So here's the spoiler alert, in case you didn't know. So that's the thing. And that's the message of Essentialism. So the success that you have, or you aspire to have, if you want to sustain it, you have to keep choosing what's essential. So it's not it's essentialism is a pursuit of a life when you're doing less but better. So when your focus is, it brings all the goodies, the productivity goodies we've been talking about in the podcast, the focus, the deep work, like all these things, the one thing, like all these things together. So the idea is of doing less but better.
It strikes me. It just I can't believe it's something we've discussed for 2 years, and I still have to relearn this idea that this notion of a zero-sum game, that hey, you have limited amount of time of focus and attention, and it's just like you have to cut things out, and it's just like, no, you want to do more and more, like, this is cool, we should do it, and it's a good thing, so you want to do it, and then like you have to, like, every now and then you remember, it's like, no, like, where did I get myself into? When we talked about my recent pursuit of simplicity and the removal of unnecessary distractions and social media and addictions, and also just simplifying things with with automation and workflows and whatnot. Like none of these were like completely new ideas for me. It's just like I forgot about this for a while. I thought this is fine, and me lying behind me while this is fine, everything is burning, right? And it's like I had to remember, like, oh, okay, I actually have to cut out most of these things, even though they were good, because it's not enough. There's just not enough time. There's not enough attention to do all of it.
Yeah, and there's this notion in the book, this fantastic quote, which I hate because it's just following you whenever you go. Like, if something is not hell yes, it's a no, right? Mm-hmm. So suddenly, like, if something is yeah, it's a no. It should be just no. So when you make a choice, you should only choose hell yes options. And of course, granted, you it's not always that you're in a privileged position that you can. You just have to sometimes choose things that are just well, yeah, because they give you food or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But in your pursuit of essentialism, you should still focus. I mean, this is essential because it brings you food anyway, so you have to do it. But the idea is to choose really where you have the biggest impact. So where you can have the biggest impact. And when I was analyzing this and I was reading the book, I was thinking, where is the impact that I have? And for me, the biggest impact is Nozbe, is keep developing the tool, is keep giving it and keep marketing it to as many people as possible, because this gets people organized, and this is what gets me going to get people organized, get teams organized, and whatever. So this is my thing, and this is where I make the biggest impact. And now the idea is how to allocate my time to make the biggest impact.
I'm going to push back on it just a little bit. I mean, I agree with the idea, but actually, after thinking about it, I've heard it many times, and I'm not sure I like the wording of it, because sometimes our enthusiasm can blind us. Like you see, it's a hell yes or it's a no. But the thing is, like, sometimes we see a new idea and we're like, hell yes, even though it's not a good idea, and it has nothing to do with whether it's actually essential or good. It's just it's new and it makes us enthusiastic and kind of blind to our kind of deeper values and our kind of grander goal. So I'm not sure I like phrasing it in terms of just being excited, because that can blind us.
True, that's true. But then and so what I like about the book is when you read the first chapters, you already get the idea of essentialism, like what it is all about. But then, just like with any book, there are all the nuances. So all the details. And one of the nuances of essentialism, like so if you just read that part, hell yes, and then enthusiasm, you're right. Yeah. Then it's not correct. It's not what the book says. Because later, when you start reading, when you continue reading the book, what the author argues is that essentialists, or people who are trying to be essentialists, who are pursuing essentialism, what they do is they do a lot more research before deciding. They analyze things more. They spend time more analyzing because they don't want to live by default. So the idea is that somebody asks you a question and you just right then, enthusiastically say, yeah, I'm going to do it, or whatever. Yeah. You give yourself permission to make a decision, right? So and to make an informed decision. Of course, there is also the threat of over thinking and whatever. But the idea is that an essentialist studies more because does more research before deciding, before committing to something, to make sure that it aligns with his goals, with his ideas, with his essential or biggest impact. So in the book, there's more research to be done before you do something, because otherwise you live by default. And it's like when we argue in productivity, space, we argue that you shouldn't check email first thing in the morning, because when you do, you start reacting to people's requests instead of designing the day the way you want. And we have had, and we did discuss morning routines several times here on this show. So, and one of the ideas of a morning routine is that you design your morning and you design consciously your day. And this way, you don't live by default. You live by how you want to live.
Yeah, definitely, and I certainly appreciate that this is the format of the book. The idea is simple, but then the book looks at it from like 100 different angles and gives kind of examples of how to apply it to different circumstances. Now, I want to expand on the idea of living by default, because this is something, this is one way of looking at this essentialism thing, one angle to look at it that I like. That I don't remember the exact phrasing from the book, but when you don't kind of design your plan, your day, when you don't have strong intentions to what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, others will design it for you.
Happily.
They will happily design your schedule around their wishes. And it's when you don't kind of plan this ahead, when you don't think about what you want, what your kind of grander goal is, it's just so easy to get derailed, because we feel pressure, obligation, whether that's social pressure or just the fact that, hey, it's like maybe your boss or just someone important in a company and they're asking you to do something. But then, like, when you lose touch with your kind of grander pursuit, even if that's the grander pursuit at your job that's like important to your job, when you're not closely in touch with it, you're just like, the moment someone asks you to do something, you will like throw out everything to get on something that's probably actually not going to be that important. That seems important at the moment, that seems urgent, but actually you could have not done it and the world would keep spinning just fine.
Yeah, and it ties. Essentialism ties with so many books that we have already discussed on this show. And for example, nonviolent communication. One of the premises of the nonviolent communication was to find out if somebody's angry or somebody's expressing their feelings. Find out which needs of this person have not been met.
Yeah.
And again, this repeats itself in this book. When somebody asks you to do something, first, you should actually study and ask them what they really want to achieve, and what's the purpose of this. If, for example, you don't agree with this task, and because you actually have a choice there, so you can ask them. You can and maybe if you get to the bottom of this, suddenly it's not you that has to do this, but there is a better person who can do the other thing, and then it reaches the same goal, and then you start questioning, this person's task, but not their needs. This way you get to the bottom of the you get to the core of the problem, and you choose to do it or not.
Yeah, that's an excellent observation. I like how you tie together those two books, but it makes a lot of sense. There's what you see on the surface, the exact request, but usually it's motivated by something deeper. And especially like if someone asks you to do something because you're an expert in that domain, then sometimes or often it turns out that they're just not a direct request is not the best way to communicate something, because when you understand what exact need, whether, and not necessarily the need of the person, but the need of like what needs to be done is like, what's the actual point, then you can like get a solution that's completely different from what you're requesting. And it might be someone else doing it. It might be something much simpler, or it might turn out that just a completely wrong way to think about it. And actually there's nothing to be done and everything is fine. It's just like, you have to see beneath the surface, which takes a lot of discipline, doesn't it? Like you to like constantly question stuff like that, and question like when you have things appearing on your plate, to question, is it essential? Is it something that really needs to be done? Is it really have to be this complicated? But ultimately you have to question it, because even though it's kind of uncomfortable, you'll end up having much more work if you don't have this discipline.
Yeah, and that's why, again, the book ties perfectly with the books about habits, like The Power of Habit or the other books we discussed on the show, with the idea that you have to design as many habits or routines as possible in order to not to have to choose these things, to make the execution flawless, make the execution of your stuff as easy as possible, and then have, not have the decision fatigue. So when a choice, when a question or a choice comes your way, you have your decision muscles ready to tackle the decision, to question this. You're not tired of just deciding on so many things today. I just whatever, right? No, that's why in the book, another concept again, the habits, to develop the habits, routines. We discussed them, like all these things, to make everything as simple as possible and to have the power to choose.
Yeah, that's another really good point. How this ties to other ideas, other books we've discussed. Like, one, like if you have the observation that there is a decision fatigue, and over time in a day you're worse and worse at it, then you can consciously design a workflow where you start a day from the most important things you've pre-decided on, and leave all of the BS at the end. Because if you start from email, you start responding, it takes a bunch of time, it takes a bunch of energy, and then you sit down to the actual essential thing, the thing you want to like dedicate yourself on and do deep work on, and it turns out you're just out, right? And then like if you do that, and if you kind of design a workflow where beforehand you just make sure that things are delegated properly, things are automated properly. You can observe patterns of things that come your way that are not essential, and you can kind of make higher level decisions and changes and ask people to take over some things and whatnot, such that you have more time for essential work. And there's fewer things coming your way that cause the decision fatigue that then cause you to get distracted on things that are not essential.
Yeah, I mean, for example, this idea that some people, question that I don't respond to my email. I mean, I have an assistant that goes through my email, and people are like, yeah, so you're not, you're not in touch with people and whatever. No, I am. But the first filter is my assistant. And very often she does a better job communicating and replying quickly than me. And then she passes to me the things that are really essential, or that she believes are essential for me. This way I create this margin, this first line of attack, and this margin for myself to execute my work, to work on NOSB, which helps, hundreds of thousands of people, instead of just replying to this one request for half an hour and just, and to just to this one person, right? And so that's really, that will helps me execute. And I'm not saying that everybody has to have an assistant, but I'm saying that in this way, it really does. I have created this system such that I have more time for the deep work, for deliberate practice, for essential stuff.
All right. There's a question I have for you. A big part of essentialism is saying no. Like,
yep.
1,000 no's for every yes.
Yeah.
A risk there, a threat, is that you'll say no to things because you just don't see a point yet, because you don't have the immediate enthusiasm, because you don't understand it, because you're afraid, because it makes you uncomfortable to try new things, new approaches, to try something that someone else maybe suggested to you. Do you have thoughts on how to discern between those? How to see when it's actually your kind of lizard brain telling you no, but not because something is not essential, but precisely the opposite, because you should have done something, but it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah. So again, I am fortunate enough that I have a team in NOSB, and again I have my assistants, which is again Helen, Magda, Daya. So I have my assistants there, and the good thing is that sometimes when there is a new thing coming our way, which is intriguing, so it's so in this way, I sometimes just pass it on to somebody to investigate. Just check it out. Let me know. Give me the summary of this, right? Or give me the gist of it, because it might be something we are interested, but maybe not, right? So this way, again, coming back to the research option, I do research, like, but not me personally, for example. Sometimes I do personally research. Sometimes I just delegate to somebody. For example, there is a new social media technique for something. I just give it to Kuba and ask him just to investigate this and give me the gist of it, and then when he does, and he just, for example, gives me a few links to some articles, I can read them myself and just have some decision, right? So it goes back to this. But sometimes, again, what we said before, I have pre-decided that these kind of things I'm not touching because I want to focus on the other things. And again, there are trade-offs, right? I know that maybe by saying no by default to these things, so to I'm losing out on something. I mean, I'm sure, but I've made the decision because the other things I know because of the research are really important right now for me. Maybe in the future, someday, maybe I'm going to get back to these things, but not, to the other things, but not now. So what I do is...
So for example, like what? Like opportunities for making new products, new companies?
This, of course, for example, I have pre-decided I'm just doing Nozbe and that's it, right? So I'm not building any other company. And if somebody comes my way saying, Michael, I have this great business idea and you've got this and this, so we can do this. No. I'm happy to have a coffee and decide over and discuss this idea and brainstorm the idea, but I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to work on it. So just by default, I'm saying no. I don't have margin for that. I don't have time for that. My time is limited. I'm just focusing on Nozbe. And for example, right now we're trying different marketing activities, and it's the same. I have decided on a few marketing activities which we want to just dive deeper and just focus on them and really get the most of them. And some of the marketing activities are really good. They have brought lots of revenue for some companies, but we cannot focus on them now. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough time of myself or other people on our team, and we said no to them deliberately. Maybe we'll get to them at some point. I'm sure we'll get to some of them because they're really effective strategies. But for now, we have pre-decided these, not now. So we'll sometimes add them to like a project someday maybe, or some of these things that I just review later. Or for example, I do quarterly offsite. I review these things and see if there is any other new opportunity or whatever. But it's good to pre-decide. Okay, I know I can be losing out here on some of these things, but I cannot win everything anyway. So let's just focus on these few things, because the thing is that life is like a rabbit hole. You start going down the rabbit hole and it's very deep. And this is why people doing less things are so successful, because if you're doing less, you can really focus, you can dive deeper. You can, like for example, let's do some Facebook ads, right? No. Facebook ads, it's a complicated system. You have to really make sure that you do them properly, you track them properly. There's so many things that you have to do there. And if you don't study them well, you're going to fail. You're not going to get enough success. So, and email marketing or some other things. So I'm just doing marketing stuff. So we know that if we double down on some of these things and really do them well, we can achieve exponential success. So let's just outright reject the other opportunities and keep them for later. So and it's tempting. It's tempting because like somebody just sends me a blog post saying, hey, this other technique is so good. You have to apply it right now. No. I cannot apply it right now. I'm really focused on the other thing. And yeah, it's tempting. It's nice, but I know that it's not just applying this thing. It requires, it's a trade-off. And as you said, it's a zero-sum game, right?
Right. And going back to my question, I really like the idea of giving it to someone else just to investigate quickly. And like giving it to someone else. It's not just about delegation, that it's not you that has to do it, but it's also the fact that someone is looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes. And yes, I like it about our process with the design fight, which we'll link to in the show notes that we've discussed a long time ago. But the gist of it, there's like a core team of 6 different people with different perspectives, but who all kind of understand design. And it's interesting because we disagree and argue and fight a lot, and that's actually a good thing, because we don't get a situation where we would reject something not because it's inessential, but because we just it's kind of new and uncomfortable. Like there's going to be someone in this team of 6 that feels passionate about it, that wants to explore it, and then we'll just have no choice but to explore it, right? And that kind of brings us more to kind of one page, that even if some of us are not excited about the problem and just want to reject it outright, we will investigate it because someone cares. And then it's still difficult because we still have to cut some things, and there's going to be someone who doesn't want this thing to be cut, but we have to make the scope reasonable for a small company that we have. Another idea that I have is I think it's a good idea to have some sort of place to put kind of long-term ideas to review later, a backlog of sorts. And I have a few of those in Nozbe. And then like when I see something that's like really interesting, not a trivial thing, but something really interesting, but I don't see myself doing it right now. And like I don't even want to like make the decision of whether I should do it or not. Is it essential or not? Or is it just like a distraction? Or maybe I should do it. I don't think about it. I put it there, and then, as you're saying, during the quarterly review, a few times a year, I will go through it. The only thing I've learned is that not to overdo it. Like, don't put too many things there, because then it's just overwhelming and you'll never get through it. It's like good ideas that you don't see yourself doing anytime soon. Put it in a backlog, review a few times a year.
Yeah, totally. I also have a project like that. For example, for my marketing ideas, I have this big backlog of some cool marketing ideas with links to blog posts explaining, these techniques and everything. And I get back to it like every month or every quarterly offsite, not every week when the weekly review. And this way, it maybe then I have a fresh perspective, or maybe some of these things just popped up recently, and we have maybe some time to explore them more. And what you said about the design fight and about how we explore things, we've had this situation many times over when somebody proposed something and we said no, hell no. But then they investigated it, and then we said, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And then they actually convinced us to go, or not. But the good idea is that there is this one person who does the exploration, exploring the options, and also. But sometimes what happens also is that the person who was passionate about it explores the options and says, no, really no. I thought it was good, but no.
I was this person many times. Like, hey, it's a really good idea. We should investigate it. It's like, no. It's like, no, I will investigate it. But then, and sometimes it turns out to be like a pretty good idea. And sometimes it will evolve many times, has to brew in our minds for many times, and it will be something completely different than from the start, but something we wouldn't think of from the start, something that had to go through this long process. And so it's like, okay, I explored it, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of things, giving it it's a stupid thing, but just giving it time makes a lot of sense, because sometimes you have to give it time for the idea to just brew slowly, and over time you like it more and more, and it will develop to be better and better. And then most of the time, the idea will start off as exciting, and it will just like over time, it's like, no. It's like you thought it was exciting, 3 months have passed, and you don't care, and you just delete it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And giving yourself this buffer is I think useful. Like sometimes you just need time to get a good perspective.
It's very healthy. And again, in this book, in the Essentialism, there was also a lot about buffer, about margin, about giving yourself time, and about playing as well, but also this buffer thing. I mean, people tend to, and I am guilty as charged, of planning too much, of wanting to do too much in every day, squeezing each minute, and then whatever. But it's really important to have the buffer, to have the time, to assume there will be unexpected things happening. Because otherwise, when the unexpected things happen, you get furious, you get frustrated, and everything goes just bad. So this is really, really crucial to have the buffer.
Yeah, I think this is a large part of what motivated my simplification and reducing social media and whatnot, because it worked fine most of the time, but then there was a difficult period where I had so many things that it just cross the threshold, right? I didn't have enough margin, this empty space to kind of to breathe, to be able to do it, right? And so now, like, there's just more space, right? And like I don't use it fully, but that's kind of by design. I have last question. I think we're running a bit late. You from the start you wanted to call this episode "The Pursuit of Essentialism." Can you expand on that, like the idea of the pursuit?
Yeah, so this is really important. I mean, first of all, we tend to say that the journey is the ultimate destination, because really, like, it's all about the journey, and our journey. I mean, in Nozbe will never end. I mean, I think not. It's gonna be just we have still so much to do, and there'll always be more to do. But the pursuit of essentialism is the fact that it's you cannot just one day become essentialist and that's it. You keep failing. You keep saying yes to things that you want to uncommit later, and there are tips how to uncommit in this book as well. And it's a constant pursuit. It's like I read this book 3 times and I still don't, I get it, but I don't get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I still blame myself for committing to something that later I regret, or for doing something. Like, I keep reviewing stuff, and I keep appreciating now that when I spent 2 hours reviewing our plan of marketing, it's not wasted 2 hours. It's important 2 hours. I become the curator, the editor of what we are going to do in these 2 hours. And it's good. This is how it's supposed to be. It's not wasted 2 hours of not doing anything. I've been reviewing this, so it makes sense. So, until I've been reading the book and trying to pursue essentialism, I would blame myself for spending so much time on planning on these things. So right. I would say the pursuit is because we never are essentialists. We will try to be essential, but we always, things will creep in, things will happen, and we have to just keep standing up. Just keep we fall down, we keep standing up, and just keep going, and keep reminding ourselves what's essential for us, what's important for us, what have we decided on yes on.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope our listeners can appreciate that, because this is why we keep discussing this stuff over and over from many angles. Just like this book, we discussed this book today, and we discussed many books with similar ideas, but we do it because we have to keep learning, because it's not that simple. And what you're saying about the time being well spent, I will spend like many hours each week, each Sunday, doing my kind of weekly review, and not just in the GTD sense, but like a broader kind of review of life and planning, and kind of taking a deeper perspective. And it's a bit time consuming, but it's like the most useful, the most rewarding, the highest impact kind of habit that I have. And without it, it would be difficult for me to make progress, because you just forget. Like, you need this feedback loop to keep pursuing, right? And not like keep staying in the same place, like kind of fooling yourself into thinking that you're pursuing something while you're in the same place, but actually, like, step by step, inch closer and closer to the ideal of sorts, the values that you have, and the life that you actually want to lead.
I want to close this with an idea that actually didn't happen until I read the book the 3rd time. I didn't see it coming. The concept of minimum viable progress. So the as you said, keep going, keep progressing. This concept, I've heard about it. I've heard about it, twice when I read the book the first times, but they never struck home. What I'm saying is that in my team, very often I want to be a hands-off manager. So I don't want to be the micromanager. So very often I will just delegate some tasks to people, or just tell them to do something, and discuss with them initially what they're supposed to do, and just leave them, hands off, leave them. And it's good. It makes sense. I mean, we have brilliant people in our team. They're empowered. They can do things great. But what I recently discovered, and by reading this book, is that my job is to check in is to check in and help, every once in a while, to review what they're doing, and not just to review to criticize them or whatever, but just to give feedback and to, maybe they're going the wrong direction, but they don't know that, and then I discover it after 3 months or something, right? And when I was recently reviewing some of the things on our team we've been doing, and I realized I've been doing a bad job with that, crappy job of checking in, and when I started checking in, we started getting really good results. Like people understood, okay, Michael, you're right. I thought about it the wrong way. Let's do it this way. And then I'm going to explore the other way. And then suddenly that I have lots to give, and I should have, again, dedicate time to these moments where I just review somebody's, project and just help them out, because ultimately as a manager or as a, founder or CEO or whoever, or just a colleague, your job is to help others do their job better. Right. And again, because I was so focused on my deep work, on my, ultimate contribution and whatever, I wouldn't want to spend so much time, micromanaging or whatever. And I'm not going to micromanage, but check in, help people make progress, help people, as you said, have a fresh eyes, fresh perspective on what they're doing, because they're experts in their fields. But when they are doing something, maybe they're just going the wrong way and they don't see it, because they think it's the right way. And when you just talk to them, give them some feedback, and then they will correct the course. So for me, this was one of the key things that I should change the way I work a little bit to really, again, dedicate more time to feedback loops to my team, even if they are not solicited. Just review, see how I can help, and this way keep them going, keep progressing, and not being just totally hands off.
That's interesting. I guess what I think what you're trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that as a CEO, it's not just your essentialism and your deep work that's important, but that of the whole organism, so to speak.
Again, yeah, that's right.